All right, everybody, this is Sheets, and I'm going to be going over today's, 7-game slate for this Monday evening. No Monday Night Football anymore. Um, so it's just going to be the NBA as far as content goes today. I am going to be putting up projections for hockey as well, and probably for LOL if there's a slate tomorrow. Off to a good start as far as that goes, by the way. Won the 333 first shot back. But with it's an interesting day of content for us because Bobby's going to be doing, I think, a video separately for me because of our schedules. And then we're going to be both doing it live at 6 o'clock together. So I think it'll be interesting to see whether our takes, at least early, resemble each other, whether they're very different, whether they're close, or whatever. And again, what I'm going to be doing, I'm not going to do kind of game by game. I'm going to kind of just take the whole slate as a whole, or the slate as a whole, and just see how it just kind of looks and where I would go based on my initial projections. And again, these projections are based on sheets, which are available for premium subscribers, which are essentially an aggregation of what the entire industry thinks, but tweaked to resemble my model, which back tests all of these projection systems for accuracy, which I think is interesting. Now, again, this only gets you a median projection. So, that's not the end of the story, but, at least it starts somewhere. So fantasy points, that would be in the E column, points per dollar in the F column, and Sheets value score, which is kind of a combination of upside, raw points, and value in the G column. And then we have projected ownership, which is derived in the same way as projections, kind of an industry aggregate, but overweighting some of the models based on how they usually perform. And then over on the right, we have minutes, which just kind of gives you a baseline of what this all comes from. Anyway, first thing I want to do is let's sort everything by Sheets value score, because I think that's usually the way to start. And the first thing that I'll notice is that there's not a real huge standout at the top. Now, again, at the top, I have all different salaries kind of lumped into this. When I say at the top, I mean with respect to Sheets value score. What I see is the first main drop coming from here, DeJounte Murray down to Bobby Portis. So the first thing I'd like to do is I want to tier these guys. I want to rank these five as kind of the top, that being Giannis, Whiteside, Embiid, Nurkic, and Murray. And what you will see, among other things, is that three of them are from the same position, that being center only, and one of them is power forward center. So as you can see, center is going to be a pretty loaded position, and even Bobby Portis right below that is from that position. So the first thing I guess you could do is derive that I think DeJounte Murray is probably someone I want to play. He's one of the top values, and he's point guard eligible. He's the only one of these top values who's point guard eligible. He's significantly, at least to me, a better player than James Harden and other point guards, and Donovan Mitchell and the next rated guys on the list here. And that's when you rate them by Sheets value score. So the first thing I would want to do is I would probably want to highlight DeJounte Murray as one of the better plays. Now, one of the things I am going to continue to do, even though I'm not going to get my game, is I want to be cognizant of possible game stacks that could emerge from this. So I should have to pause for just a second. Sorry. So if I were going to fill in a lineup, I'd probably start with DeJounte Murray. But what I was going to say is that even though I'm not going game by game, I want to be cognizant of possible game stacks. So if there's somebody from the Knicks side or someone else from San Antonio, that would be actually really nice. And we're going to get to that in a minute. See, like the first guy in San Antonio that I'll look at that I see here is Jakob Poeltl, but the problem is that he's the second best Spur, but he's the sixth best center, so it's going to be tough to play him. Okay, so Giannis, Whiteside, Embiid, Nurkic, Murray, these are the top plays. Then you go down a little bit and you have kind of a real smoothing, as it goes all the way down between Portis, Harden, Mitchell, Durant. You see the list here. So what I like to do is when I see a slate that looks like this, it reminds me that I really want to be a stickler for ownership in a situation like this. Like you have two guys that are rated somewhat similarly, you really want to go for the guy that's lower owned, especially on a slate like this where the values are just so close to one another. I mean, I'll give you an example here. You have, although the prices are different, you have Anthony Simons at, he's got a value score of 153 compared to LaMelo Ball's 147. But you have Simons at 20% ownership and LaMelo is down at 7. So maybe it's a better play at the shooting guard position, play maybe someone like LaMelo as opposed to Simons, even though Simons might be slightly a better value. Okay. So let's take a look at this. Is Hassan Whiteside at center. So when we rank these guys by points per dollar, you're going to see that he's going to rate to be a really, really strong play. So it's certainly worth giving him some extra, notoriety, but we'll get there when we go to points per dollar. Next thing I want to look at is, okay, so if you want to play some of these top guys, let's then talk about maybe correlating. So Giannis is, again, very, very strong play. And they are playing Charlotte. So what does that mean? Well, we just mentioned that maybe LaMelo Ball could be a nice low-owned shooting guard. So what you can do is maybe you can pair Giannis with LaMelo. Okay. Now the problem is when you pair these guys together. I'll give you an example. Let's say you did want to play DeJounte Murray and also LaMelo and Giannis, then now you only have 3,800 a person, so that's going to be somewhat difficult. I gotta stop share for just a second. We'll reshare. Sorry. I think I'm sharing the right screen. I should be. Let me see something. I hope I am. If not, this is a big mess. In any case, so I think the first thing that I'm identifying here is that if then maybe you can get a real high price stack situation with Giannis and LaMelo. I mean, it's a really, really high total, and if Charlotte keeps the game close, I mean, you have overtime vig, and you just have just general competitiveness that's going to, have the highest scorers with the ball in their hands just that much more often than if it was just some random game that isn't that competitive. So, yeah. Giannis and LaMelo certainly look like something that you might want to do together. If you're going to have to then make some concessions, but I think it makes a little sense. Now, Whiteside, if you're going to play Whiteside, they're playing Detroit, and unfortunately, I don't know how much Detroit shows up here. So he doesn't quite fit the bill as far as a correlative play, but he's still a really, really good play. Embiid, they're playing Houston. And unfortunately, the one Houston guy I have in here is at the same position, that being Christian Wood. So it's going to be difficult to play Embiid and Wood together. And the next one is you have Nurkic, and he's on Portland. And the next guy you have there is Brooklyn. They're playing Brooklyn. So if you wanted to, you could play Nurkic with Harden or Durant. Because what you have going for you in that scenario is you do have, while Nurkic is going to be high owned, you're going to have Durant and Harden be low owned. So I think you can do that also. The other thing is that you have Simons over here. So what you could do is you could play Simons and Nurkic together, right? That would make some sense. And then you could run that back with maybe with Harden. And what that also does for you is that allows you flexibility, because if you, all else being equal, you do want to play guys in the later game. So if things don't go the way you want, you have some room to change. So that's another thing you can do. You can do Nurkic with Simons with Harden, and get guys that are highly projected that also have a little bit of correlation as well. Next thing I want to do is I want to re-rank all these guys by point per dollar. And the reason I want to do it this way is just to kind of, again, distinguish what I consider unfadable, super duper value versus just kind of okay value. And usually the cutoff for me, usually the cutoff for me is right about that 7x projection. In other words, if you're looking at points per dollar, if you have guys projected over 7x, those are very, very difficult to fade. But if you have guys that are just kind of cheapo value, that are 6x, somewhere between 6 and 6.5x, while I consider them good value, they're not unfadable. So you want to play guys like that if you need them, but you don't want to start with those, if that makes any sense. So the guys that I'm referring to, these kind of, you know, I already mentioned Hassan Whiteside, definitely the best point per dollar play on the slate. But if you want to look at some of these other cheapos, now we're talking about some San Antonio guys. And just to kind of run through who those are based on the sheets, you're going to have Josh Primo at 3,600. You're going to have Lonnie Walker at 4,200. You're going to have Kelta Bates Diop at 3,800. So this is actually really, really, you could use this type of value if you do things like I suggested earlier, that being spending a lot on maybe a LaMelo Giannis mini stack or something like that. That's where these types of value plays come in somewhat handy. And then you have Bryn Forbes also. I really don't have too much of an opinion on all four of them. It seems as though they're competing for the same types of touches, right? Just kind of scoring related touches. So I don't think you want to use more than one of them in each lineup. But I think all of them rate to be somewhat good plays. Now, Macklemore is an interesting one because he is, he's somewhat shooting dependent. And you could also get some Simons to Macklemore assists. So if you wanted to, this is a third Portland guy you could play. So if you wanted, you could play, say, Simons and Macklemore and Nurkic and run that back with somebody like Harden or Durant. Now, again, this is not the way a lot of people like to play. Most people don't want to play. Most people don't want to play three guys from the same team in the same lineup. But I like doing, especially, God forbid it goes to overtime and you have all these guys in the game getting an extra 5 minutes. I mean, you're the nuts. So that's something I really like. I like the Macklemore, Nurkic, Simons. Either use two of the three, one of the three, or all three of the three. So what else do we have as far as the points per dollar plays? You have Furkan Korkmaz, looks to be pretty good, about 5.7x. So you have Bobby Portis, who is a pretty good value play also, but the problem again is that he's that center position. So while you might get to him, he's certainly not going to be a priority over there. And I mentioned Pirtle also, and then there you have another Portland guy that you have Nasir Little. So you see where we're headed here. You have all this Portland stuff, and you have to decide whether to make, if you're going to make rules, maybe do min 1, max 3, or min 2, max 3, or do what I do and don't set a min. Whatever you get, you get. And then if you want, you could make a correlative decision that you don't want 4 in the same lineup. But I wouldn't start with a min of anybody because I think that projections kind of handle that already. Like if your projections are not such that you really need one guy from every lineup, then you just, why force it? I would not, just to reiterate, I would not pre-build force a min or a max of anything, okay? I don't force exposure limits. I don't force anything. I first let the build just happen. And if whatever reason I don't like the build, or if I don't want 4 guys from the same lineup, from the same team, then I could set minimums after the fact and make that work, okay? What else? I mean, I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, other value plays that I didn't notice was maybe Davion Mitchell, but I don't know. I just prefer the other guys a little bit better. So if you're hand building, if you are picking plays, I hope this was a good start to dealing with the slate. But just for fun, what I want to do is I'm going to do a Saber Sim build with my projections and see if the builds that I kind of described are builds that would actually be created. Now, again, shout out to SaberSim. SaberSim is not just plugging in the medians. SaberSim is actually simulating the games based on, a range of outcomes based on the median. So it's going to be a little more accurate for what we're trying to accomplish. That being building good GPP lineups. So let's fire this off. I did one already, but just to show you that I'm doing it live here. Let's fire off another one with about a 20 max setting. That means you're going to get some upside, some low owned stuff, but it's not going to be that brutal. So when I do it like this, I end up getting what do I get? I get 100% Whiteside, a whole lot of Nurkic. There's Giannis. I do get more Kirk Maz than I would imagine, but then there's Lonnie Walker, DeJounte Murray, Josh Primo, the guys that we kind of mentioned. Okay. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys. Hopefully Bobby does a little more in-depth breakdown of the games. But again, that's not really my thing. Just kind of go with the projections, then build lineups as a result. So I will see you guys at about 6 with Bobby, and we'll, take into account all the late injury news and help with builds, and you can watch me struggle, make my own. That will do it. Good luck, everybody, and let's get it.